Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks for joining us. It is Friday evening, December 28th. Okay, that means translation 78 hours till the ball dropping, not just in Times Square for New Year's, but also from the country dropping off the edge of the fiscal cliff. That was pretty dramatic, wasn't it? Okay. Basically, through a combination of ineptitude, gamesmanship, partisanship, whatever you want to put a bad ship on it, basically Congress has gotten us right to the edge, something that most of us who follow this thought, not going to do it again, not after what happened last year. Well, wrong again. We are. We just heard from the president. For those of you just joining us, we'll recap what he said, and we'll also bring you his address. It was about a 5-minute address. In about a minute or so, I'll have that for you in its entirety. But before we take you behind closed doors in the White House for what they're talking about and also what's at stake here, suffice to say, and I want to bring in Andrew Whitman here, our senior political correspondent. Andrew, they ran it right up to the end. We just heard from the president, and the headline basically was, okay, president said, we're going to play chicken here. One way or the other, you guys are either going to have a vote, which he says he's cautiously optimistic that the Senate will be able to work something out, or I'm going to force a vote to the floor of the U.S. Senate here, up or down on tax cut for 98%, maybe 99%, we'll find out the number, and then secondarily extending unemployment insurance for more than 2 million Americans who are going to lose it on January 1, plus some guarantee of at least a timetable or a framework to get the bigger stuff done. It seems like he's had it.
Yeah, this was clearly something of a power play from President Obama. He met earlier in the day with John Boehner, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid, and apparently very little progress was made in that meeting. And then he, in what would essentially
be... They called it productive, whatever that means.
I think that's a very cordial way of saying we didn't reach a deal. But then you saw the lack of productivity in his statement just a few minutes ago, where he basically brought out his presidential hammer, which is, if you can't come to a deal that's going to pass, I'm going to make you vote on it anyway, so that you have to reject a tax cut for 98% of Americans. It's really just another ploy to make Republicans look bad in rejecting the latest offer.
Although I always think it's significant, I want to bring our table now, that he didn't use the word Republican. Usually when he wants to drop the hammer, he points out one party. Today, he said Washington in general here. And let's bring in our panel, and joining Andrew and myself, Eric Cook here, media consultant at Hiltzik. Did I say that right? Hiltzik. Thank you, Strategies, and former press secretary for Congressman Anthony Weiner, political journalist and author, and so much more, Dominic Carter. And we got TJ McCormick here, who now is doing his own radio show every morning on Westchester's WVOX. All right, guys, you heard the president. We're going to share it with the audience in a second. I'm going to play it, but first, before we do, you see daylight at the end of the tunnel? We'll start with you after what you heard.
I mean, I think the president, you know, he as I said last time I was here, he campaigned on this. This is something that he cares about. I don't think he wants to go over the cliff, despite what, you know, some people may think, because I think, you know, people will hold that as a failure of Washington. I don't think he wants to see. I don't think he wants to see Americans.
So you think
Washington.
We have a deal before?
Just something. It's just a gut feeling that says that the president and McConnell and everyone will get together and do something.
I don't think there's going to be a deal. I'm praying for the 2 million people that you mentioned on unemployment, that there's some type of temporary stop measure so that these people will
they got no margin,
so that they'll be able to eat and live. Other than that, I don't see anything coming out of this before the new year.
Andrew, how about you? You think they get something done or not?
No.
All right, TJ?
I think something will get done. I don't think the president necessarily has a vested interest in anything being done. I think if we do go over the cliff and he gets to ride in on a stallion, that's all the better for him. It's more for his legacy.
And we'll talk about the importance of January 3rd for one John Boehner. Yeah, stallion. We'll get into that too. This was the president, for those of you just joining us, just a few minutes ago, saying where we are right now.
David.
Good afternoon, everybody. For the past couple of months, I've been working with leaders of both parties to try and forge an agreement that would grow our economy and shrink the deficit. A balanced plan that would cut spending in a responsible way, but also ask the wealthiest Americans to pay a little more. And above all, protect our middle class and everybody who's striving to get into the middle class. I still want to get this done. It's the right thing to do for our families, for our businesses, and for our entire economy. But the hour for immediate action is here. It is now. We're now at the point where in just 4 days, every American's tax rates are scheduled to go up by law. Every American's paycheck will get considerably smaller. And that would be the wrong thing to do for our economy. It would be bad for middle-class families, and it would be bad for businesses that depend on family spending. Fortunately, Congress can prevent it from happening if they act right now. I just had a good and constructive discussion here at the White House with Senate and House leadership about how to prevent this tax hike on the middle class. And I'm optimistic we may still be able to reach an agreement that can pass both houses in time. Senators Reid and McConnell are working on such an agreement as we speak. But if an agreement isn't reached in time between Senator Reid and Senator McConnell, then I will urge Senator Reid to bring to the floor a basic package for an up or down vote, one that protects the middle class from an income tax hike, extends the vital lifeline of unemployment insurance to 2 million Americans looking for a job, and lays the groundwork for future cooperation on more economic growth and deficit reduction. Guys, I can hear you over here. I believe such a proposal could pass both houses with bipartisan majorities, as long as those leaders allow it to actually come to a vote. If members of the House or the Senate want to vote no, they can. But we should let everybody vote. That's the way this is supposed to work. If you can get a majority in the House and you can get a majority in the Senate, then we should be able to pass a bill. So the American people are watching what we do here. Obviously, their patience is already thin. This is deja vu all over again. America wonders why it is that in this town, for some reason, you can't get stuff done in an organized timetable. Why everything always has to wait till the last minute. Well, we're now at the last minute. And the American people are not going to have any patience for a politically self-inflicted wound to our economy. Not right now. The economy is growing, but sustaining that trend is going to require elected officials to do their jobs. The housing market is recovering, but that could be impacted if folks are seeing smaller paychecks. The unemployment rate is the lowest it's been since 2008. But already you're seeing businesses and consumers starting to hold back because of the dysfunction that they see in Washington. Economists, business leaders, all think that we're poised to grow in 2013, as long as politics in Washington don't get in the way of America's progress. So we've got to get this done. I just want to repeat, we had a constructive meeting today. Senators Reid and McConnell are discussing a potential agreement where we could get a bipartisan bill out of the Senate, over to the House, and done in a timely fashion so that we met the December 31st deadline. But given how things have been working in this town, we always have to wait and see until it actually happens. The one thing that the American people should not have to wait and see is some sort of action. So if we don't see an agreement between the two leaders in the Senate, I expect a bill to go on the floor, and I've asked Senator Reid to do this, put a bill on the floor that makes sure that taxes on middle-class families don't go up, that unemployment insurance is still available for 2 million people, and that lays the groundwork then for additional deficit reduction and economic growth steps that we can take in the new year. But let's not miss this deadline. That's the bare minimum that we should be able to get done. And it shouldn't be that hard, since Democrats and Republicans both say they don't want to see taxes go up on middle-class families. And I just have to repeat, outside of Washington, nobody understands how it is that this seems to be a repeat pattern over and over again. Ordinary folks, they do their jobs. They meet deadlines. They sit down and they discuss things, and then things happen. If there are disagreements, they sort through the disagreements. The notion that our elected leadership can't do the same thing is mind-boggling to them. It needs to stop. So I'm modestly optimistic that an agreement can be achieved. Nobody's going to get 100% of what they want, but let's make sure that middle-class families and the American economy, and in fact the world economy, aren't adversely impacted because people can't do their jobs. All right? Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, and that again was the president, about 25 minutes ago. Dominic, let's approach this from a pragmatic standpoint here. We already learned, usually people can count votes in Washington, but as John Boehner learned the hard way, somebody either couldn't whip the votes here or somebody couldn't do a head count. But either way, it was embarrassing for them. So we already know they don't telegraph something and necessarily knowing what's going to happen. That said, I don't see the president doing this press conference. There's a little bit of, I'll be the last word here before the weekend, but I don't see him doing this unless he thought that there was a chance he could get something done. Am I wrong?
I agree with you. I think that he has to look presidential as the clock is winding down. So there's a little bit of that, but I do agree with you that maybe the president knows something that we doesn't know, but he's saying, look, even if we can't reach an agreement, let's do something to protect this tax cut and the unemployed.
Okay.
So, I mean, maybe he does.
Now, you worked for a congressman, and let's explain a little bit, not a Civics 101, but how the two chambers work here. Frankly, they try to get this thing done in the House, and it turned into a cluster you-know-what. So then they go to the Senate, and they say, Reed and McConnell, okay, you two guys work something out here. You already got 50-something votes to start with Dems. We only need a handful of Republicans to peel over. We know we can do this. And then you can kick it to the House, and then nobody's going to, you don't have to share the blame as a whole party for this. You can just look at the House crazies and say, it's you guys in the Tea Party. At the end of the day, craft a deal for me that gives a little bit of cover as it relates to McConnell, but still something that the Republicans in the Senate can say that we walked away with the deal. Is it $500,000? Is it $400,000? What's the cutoff point here for the taxes to freeze at?
I think $500,000 probably would work for Republicans. I mean, look, Republicans cannot continue to be the party that defends millionaires and billionaires, that continues to put their priorities ahead of the middle class. This is a crisis which was created 514 days ago during the debt limit. It's a completely man-created, Congress-created issue.
You had to try to screw it up to get it to this point. You had to literally put a penalty in place, then have the dysfunction to get to the same place you were a year ago, except this time double down with the punishment. And TJ, let me ask you. Yeah. You and I both know these things get done one way or the other because of leverage, okay? President's got a heck of a lot more leverage. Sure, he knows what happens. If they don't get a deal done, there's going to be a bill that's going to be on the floor to say, 98% of America, get behind me. I'm for you. Now Republicans, who are you going to fight for?
But you know what? It's not business as usual. Americans are not stupid. They know that
Every
people
poll
making
says they want
people who are making $250,000 a year are not millionaires and they're not billionaires. And there is nothing, not one word came out of that president's mouth about anything in the realm of cuts. The people know that there is no problem collecting revenue. We have a spending problem. We are addicted to spending, and he's not talking about it.
Why should we be talking cuts at this 11th hour?
Because that's supposed to be.
If Republicans can't agree on anything, why should he be doing
Republicans have offered him taxes on millionaires. He kicked it back. He still wants to.
Yes, he did. No. Wait, one second. John Boehner tried to, but he couldn't even pass it in his own caucus.
That's true. And that's why, by the way, when this thing doesn't get done, Boehner gone. Boehner gone. He needs to absolutely. He cannot hold his caucus together. We talk about this in the green room. It's true. He tried to. The Republicans should have gone there. That is the problem with the Republicans. They should have absolutely taken that and given it to the president.
And by the way, when you say
shame on them.
The president already said he'd go to 400, and that wasn't the finish of the negotiation. He already tipped he'd go to 400. He already talked about that he put into adjustments as it relates to Medicare. He already talked about Social Security.
A year ago, loopholes and deductions was going to be enough, according to the president himself. Loopholes and deductions. Now here a year later, he's offered loopholes and deductions, and he ridicules the notion. And so it's, but again, it's brinksmanship on everybody's part. But again, $250,000 is not millionaires and billionaires, and people know it. We do not have a tax collection problem. We have a spending problem. If he took all...
Andrew, I want you to respond to this editorial. This was in Salon here, echoing what a lot of other people had said. And Joan Walsh said, still, the president has all the cards. It's time for Obama to remind Americans who's worked the hardest to resolve the stalemate, or else I fear, she writes, the phony blame game will begin to spread the shame equally. Let's talk about the clock, okay, and why certain dates are important. We all know what happens January 1. As Dominic said, the most pressing immediate hit is people who have no margin of error in this country, 2 million, soon to be 3 million after a month or two, got nothing. No unemployment, basically, and then there's real problems. Moreover, talk about why January 3rd is an important date here, and if this thing drags on, how the blame could spread not just for the folks who voted down, let's say, freezing rates for 98% of Americans, but how they could extend to the president, too.
January 3rd is the first day of the new Congress, and in addition to all the new members being sworn in, you swear in the leadership, and you have the elections for the leadership. That means Harry Reid gets reelected in the Senate. And in the House, it's John Boehner trying to stay on for another term as House Speaker, or fight off the, I'm sorry, what was the sound effect that you used before on what to do with it? That's it. And there are Republicans who want to do that. And frankly, there are a lot of people who are wondering if that would be a better reflection of where the Republican Party is right now, since Boehner can't seem to control his caucus in the House. There are some people who think that if he gets reelected, that frees him up to do a little wrangling of votes and get a deal passed.
Stupid word games here that happen only in Washington. But come January 3rd, new Congress sworn in, he's the Speaker, they get to vote. Then he can say, I'm going to try to cut taxes on 98% of Americans because in January 1, the rates go up for everybody. So it won't be a tax hike and he won't violate this stupid dopey pledge. And he can say he's doing that. So we can go through all the semantics that Washington is famous for, but at least he could get some, I guess, philosophical cover doing it. You still don't think? I think they get something done. You think it happens after January 3rd when we go through all this rigmarole?
Something definitely happens at the January 3rd because Wall Street is going to force their hand. There's not going to be any choice with this matter because eventually, remember, the president, a resounding victory, but the L word, legacy. So he can only let it go down.
I like the grand old party is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I mean, literally, I've heard a lot of dumb things. But the idea that they would be prepared in an up or down vote to freeze, they've already ticked off, the whole 47%. Now you're going to double down on it and say to 98% of the Americans, yeah, I'm sorry. If I don't get my millionaires, if I don't cover for the millionaires, I can't look out for you.
But not millionaires is $250,000, not a millionaire. $250,000 is not a millionaire. I don't make $100,000. I don't make $1 million. I don't make.
Buddy, you couldn't even pass millionaires in the House.
But here's the thing. But again, we have to stop. You just did the semantics. You just did the rhetoric right there.
No, I did what happened in the caucus vote.
Both of you.
All right, we're going to jump to a break here, but obviously we're going to follow this situation. If there's any developments in the hour, we'll come back to it. But we're going to get to our debate and also our question for you at home. And it has to do, obviously, in the aftermath of the Newtown tragedy, a debate that I thought wouldn't have gotten any traction, but now is. Imagine your child's teacher has a loaded gun in their desk, and it's a reality that some schools around the country are pursuing as we speak, obviously in the wake of the latest tragedy. Is this how to keep kids safe? More guns in schools? We'll get into that, and again, that's a question for you at home to sound off on. Our toll-free lines open right now. You can see the toll-free number there on the screen. Send us your calls. You can also send us your comments online. Go to our Facebook page, and we'll put those comments on the air. That's all coming up after this.